I'm going to hand over to my colleague Camilla now, who's going to scare the pants off you in terms of what scrutiny needs to do about this.
Thank you, Ian. I'm not. I'm not going to scare anyone. So I think, you know, what I'd like to do is come in with a little bit of a call to action. Let's put it that way, as a more positive. So, Ian, you have really, really nicely set out where we're talking about finances, where we're talking about a challenge sector, and actually seeing it on the last page laid out all of those challenges in the minds of scrutineers when you are looking at setting a balanced budget, where you are looking at trying to work with the council to really make the right decisions for residents. And that's what we're looking at today, really, isn't it? So, you know, local government sector, we know it's under severe pressure, and I know everybody on this call will be feeling that in one way or another, and a lot of that is similar, and actually this is why we've designed the session today, to hear from you. We know there is going to be more change. We know that central government is looking at this. We know that changes amongst how local government is organised are unsettling everybody, whether you're going through LGR, whether you're going through Devo, or whether you're already in a unitary council, but actually there are other elements there. There is more uncertainty. We are in that kind of unprecedented VUCA environment that Ian introduced at the start. What do we do with that then? Where does scrutiny go with it? So one of the things is this reactionary world, that actually decisions need to be taken, and they need to be taken quickly. I know certainly when I joined scrutiny more than 20 years ago, we were having some of these discussions. We were doing, actually, you know, this budget isn't sustainable. How do we make that more sustainable? What's scrutiny's contribution to it? But that might have been a task group that lasted a year. That might have been in a number of deliberations at committee over months. What we're seeing now, and Ian particularly was talking about, you know, the divestment of capital assets, moving quickly to position, you know, particular attractiveness for funding, to try and be reactionary, working at pace. So that means that getting decisions made quicker, there is more risk, and also there's more. For me, that's actually, there's more need for greater scrutiny, for good scrutiny, for all the voices around the table to go, what could be the implications of this decision? And it doesn't matter what element of finances we're talking about for that. It's, you know, if we're talking about the capital strategy, there are, what does this mean if we sell this asset? What does it mean once we've sold the asset and we can't plug this gap in the future? We know that demand-led services are, you know, seeing that unprecedented rise. Often they're people services. Where's scrutiny's role in that? How is scrutiny asking the questions? Because we know that salami slicing is no longer an option. Not that it should have been. So thinking about how scrutiny having that voice in there of the public. How is scrutiny listening to residents? What do residents want? How is there two-way dialogue going on between trying to communicate what is the council's challenge, what is its strategy, what's its plan, and actually what might that look like on the ground, and also then reflecting the voice of residents up into decision making. We know that unintended consequences might be this. Actually, has cabinet, have the executive thought about this as they're making these decisions? And scrutiny really need to be attuned to that, and need to be looking at that, not just, oh, this decision's happened, ask some good questions and let's move on. Actually, how are we going deeper? How are we understanding that, to be fit for purpose, not just for the short term, the medium term, but actually the long term? And scrutiny being equipped to ask some of those, you know, questions about where is that evidence base? And where we're working at pace, often we're looking at a shorter evidence base. It might be that your senior officers go, we've just got this needs to be decided now, this needs to be gone for now. Can we take it to scrutiny the day it goes to cabinet? Can we take it to scrutiny immediately before its decision's agreed? And actually trying to work in a really constructive way, which doesn't mean not active challenge, absolutely get the active challenge in, but trying to work in a constructive way with your senior decision makers within the council to make sure that the best decisions are made. There is a need for a strong scrutiny focus on the medium term, so that, you know, we know council budgets have been set by year by year by year. That really doesn't lend itself to kind of planning decisions that go for more than 1 year. We've heard the government's plans on that, great, but actually where is that medium-term challenge coming from scrutiny? Because regardless of how long your budget is set for, scrutiny should still be looking at that medium-term challenge. Okay, if we're going to cut this amount out of this element of the budget this year, what does that do on the figures for next year? What does that do on the figures in 4 years' time? How do we know that? How robust is the evidence that that is being based on? And scrutiny should absolutely be front and centre asking those questions. So the call really is, this is doing what scrutiny does best. And I would say that, not giving up, repositioning scrutiny, thinking about getting your thinking right. This is not the opportunity to play party politics, because really we know that the VUCA environment is not going anywhere. It might be that there's a little bit of political point scoring, but that doesn't make the best decisions. It really, really doesn't. It might get some local news headlines at best. It's certainly not going to make sure that your financial decisions, that your financial robust management of the council is in the interest that it needs to be. So that's really, really important, I think, there. So thinking about how scrutiny can be reactive, how actually the work is put in to get good relationships with decision makers, to see things as upstream as they can be, and actually to do that horizon scanning. What is coming up? How are scrutiny members abreast of what's going on in the news? We know that spend is challenged. Actually, what does that mean for your budgets? Where are your high spend items? And I think there's something here about where you have, however your structure is, and it doesn't matter how your scrutiny structure is put together, thinking about actually how committees are talking to each other. How are your scrutiny chairs not letting things fall between the gaps? Oh, that's we're this scrutiny committee, they're that scrutiny committee, we look at this, they look at that. Well, actually, is that covering everything? And if it's not, how are you bringing those items forward? That might not be council spend. For example, it might be, the cost of living on your residence is going to have unintended consequences on the council tax collection rates. How is that reflected in your medium-term planning? So thinking about outside the box, not just this is a paper in front of us, we're going to ask good questions on it. So broadening that search, and scrutiny is really, really good at doing that, but it does require a mindset shift if you're not already in that space. Can we have the next slide, please, Ian?
Yeah.
So really, we're looking here, scrutiny's role. What is scrutiny's role in this VUCA world? Well, I think we would argue it's a strengthened role. There is more need for in-depth scrutiny, for scrutiny making that valuable contribution. Ian was talking about councils under, Section 114 notices. He was talking about failures in governance. There is a need for scrutiny to step up, and in many areas of the country, it's already doing that. But across the board, there is a need for scrutiny really to be contributing to decision making. So what's scrutiny's role then? We know that's the same overall objective as your executive, as your cabinet. You are part of the council. However, there is a different contribution. It's not just we've got the cabinet report, we'll ask some good questions and then cabinet make the decision. What is your modus operandi? What is your different contribution? I think I've covered some of those elements in what I've said so far, but really challenge yourselves. Are you adding value? Are you making recommendations in there? Are you using all the levers that you can to absolutely make sure that the decisions taken that have a financial underpinning are in the interests of the council, that really are as clear as you can make it? Now, one of the things that I've been talking to a number of different councils about is having a financial inspiration for looking at issues, but actually looking at services beyond the finances. So I would say to you, don't just look at the pounds and pence. Don't just reduce it into what is the spend today, what is the spend tomorrow, how can we make it less? That might be the basis of the conversation, but it might equally be that actually scrutiny can meaningfully look at things by going, here's a high spend area, let's understand it, let's unpick it, let's use that 5 whys. Why is it like this? Where is that demand coming from? What can be done about that demand? It actually, are our systems, are our processes managing that demand in the way that absolutely gets the resident voice in there? And that's really difficult. That's a tricky task, because it's not just about residents saying we want fewer potholes or we all want a service that looks like this. It's about that communication going, we'd love there to be no potholes ever again. That's not realistic. What is realistic? How do we manage that? Actually, how can we have really good communications so that you're confident, residents are confident that the council is doing everything in its power to meet that need, but doing that within a resource envelope. And we know that resource envelope, as Ian's outlined, is increasingly challenging and is going to be increasingly challenging. I think there is more need for dialogue, for communication with residents, not less need. And that might be, with some angry people. I know certainly over, campaign groups are there that are frustrated. They are struggling, particularly, we've seen a lot of send services, high value spend areas for councils. Actually, how are residents able to access services? How is that clarity there? How is Scrutiny bringing transparency into decision making? Because that really, really matters even more. I think I've covered the other elements on the slide, but thinking about being collaborative, this is not a time for politics. This is not a time for political shots. Those don't land. This is actually about making decisions in the interest of people that live within the area.